My name is Camille Sterling. I'm 31 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I was about to marry the love of my life. I didn't think my engagement would die over a sentence that sounded almost reasonable. "If you really love me," my boyfriend said, casual, like he was asking me to pass the salt, "you'll put my parents' names on the house. Not my name, not our names, his parents." And the worst part, I smiled. I even nodded like a woman who still believed love was something you could prove with paperwork, because in that moment, my brain did what it always did when something felt wrong. It tried to make it make sense. Ethan Harrison and I had been together 4 years, engaged 8 months. The wedding was set for June. The venue was booked. The guest list was a battlefield of family opinions and dietary restrictions. But I still believed we were building something real, something solid. And the house was supposed to be the beginning of it. I'd been saving for years. No flashy dream mansion, just a 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from downtown. A place with enough light for plants to live and enough space to breathe. Ethan knew all of it. We'd talked about it since year 2, back when love was still simple and the future still sounded like an adventure. He'd even helped me pick neighborhoods. He'd sent me listings with little comments like, "This one has a backyard for your future dog." He said it like a promise. When I finally got pre-approved 2 months ago, Ethan lifted me off the ground and spun me in the kitchen like I'd won something. We celebrated with champagne. He posted a picture of my hand holding the pre-approval letter carefully cropped, so my name wasn't visible, with the caption, "One step closer to forever." I remember thinking, we're going to be okay. Now I look back and realize something else happened that night. His parents started calling. At first I thought it was excitement. Involve future in-laws, right? Linda Harrison began texting me listings multiple a day like she was my agent. Robert Harrison asked detailed questions about my down payment interest rate loan term. The first time I laughed and said Ethan must have told them everything. But the questions didn't feel like curiosity. They felt like a spreadsheet. How much do you have saved? Is your job stable? Do you have life insurance? What's your plan if the market shifts? I tried to ignore the way Linda said your house instead of you two. I tried to ignore how she'd always spoken to me, like I was auditioning for the role of worthy woman, and she was the casting director. Ethan always defended her. She just cares. He'd say she wants the best for us. It wasn't until last month after dinner, after a home renovation show Ethan liked while I was on my laptop building a budget spreadsheet for furniture, that Ethan finally said the thing out loud. "Babe," he said, scrolling his phone tone light, almost rehearsed. I was thinking, when you buy the house, maybe we should put my parents' names on it too. I looked up slowly. "What do you mean?" "You know," he said, like I was being dense on purpose. "Co-owners for security." I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because it was so absurd my body needed somewhere to put the shock. Security for who, I asked. He didn't laugh back. His face stayed calm. "Too calm for me," he said, "for us. My parents have been so supportive. It would make them feel involved. And if anything happens to you, I'd be protected." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. "Ethan," I said carefully, closing my laptop, "if we're married, I'm protected. That's how marriage works." I know he swallowed, then did something that made my stomach tighten. He bit his lip. A small gesture, but it didn't look like his nervous habit. It looked like someone else's. "It's just smarter this way," he said. "My mom says it's what smart couples do." There it was, Linda, the invisible third person in our relationship, sliding her hand onto the steering wheel. "Why would your parents need to be on the deed?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay level. "It's not about need." Ethan's tone sharp and subtle, but present. "It's about trust. If you really love me, you'll do this. It's just paperwork, just signatures. It doesn't change anything between us. Just paperwork." I remember staring at him, trying to understand how someone could say something that dangerous with such a soft voice. Because putting someone on a deed doesn't mean they're involved. It means they legally own your home. It means they can force a sale, take loans against it, refuse to refinance, turn your safety into leverage. And Ethan wanted me to hand that power to two people who weren't paying a dollar toward it. Two people who already owned their own home outright. Two people who'd never once asked what I needed to feel secure. "I need to think about it," I said. Ethan's face changed immediately, like a switch flipped. Cold, distant. "Think about it," he repeated. "We're getting married in 6 months. What's yours is mine, right?" "That's not fair." He gave me a small laugh that wasn't humor. It was punishment. What's not fair is you acting like my family is trying to take advantage of you. I felt heat rise in my chest. Welcoming Linda once told me my perfume smelled a little cheap. Robert once suggested I should consider a more serious career path because my job title didn't impress him enough at dinner. But I didn't throw those memories like weapons. I just said quietly, "Your parents being on my deed is not normal." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice lowering like he was trying to be reasonable. "Amber and her husband did it," he said. "It's not a big deal. My parents just want to feel safe like we're a real family. A real family, not a real couple, not us his parents." We argued for an hour. He accused me of being paranoid. I accused him of confusing love with control. Then he cried. Not loud sobbing. Controlled tears, the kind that made me feel like the villain for having boundaries. "I just want to feel secure," he whispered. "Why is that so hard for you?" And that's the moment I realized the trap. If I said no, I didn't love him. If I hesitated, I didn't trust him. If I questioned it, I was attacking his family. Every path made me the monster. By the end, I was exhausted, emotionally. Wrung out my hands, cold, my head pounding, and I said the sentence that would end everything. "Fine," I whispered. "I'll do it." Ethan's relief was instant, like he'd been holding his breath, waiting for me to surrender. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "Thank you. You're making the right choice." Then he went to bed happy, and I stayed awake. Lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of my apartment, I felt something inside me sharpen into a single clear thought. Why is he pushing this so hard? Because if it was truly about trust, he wouldn't need pressure. And if it was truly about love, he wouldn't need leverage. The next morning, after Ethan left for work, I made a call. Not to my best friend, not to my mom, to my attorney. His name is Graham Adler, and he'd helped me with contracts before when I freelanced. He answered on the second ring. "Camille," he said, "you sound like someone just pulled the floor out from under you." I swallowed. "They want me to put his parents on the deed." There was a pause, small ale but heavy. Then he said carefully, "Do not do that." I exhaled like my body had been waiting for permission to believe what my instincts were screaming. "If you put their names on the deed," Graham continued, "you could lose the house, even if you pay for every cent. If the relationship ends, they can force a sale or hold your property hostage. You'd be tying your financial future to two people who owe you nothing." My throat tightened. "I know." "Then why are you calling me?" he asked gently. "Because I didn't want to fight anymore. I wanted the truth." "I want to call his bluff," I said. "Can you draft something that looks official but doesn't give them ownership?" Silence. Then Graham said slowly, "You're thinking lease." "Yes, a long-term lease," I said, voice steady now. "Their names on it connected to the property. If this is truly about involvement and trust, it should be enough. And if it's not," Graham said, "you'll know what this was really about." My hand stopped shaking. "Do it," I whispered. "Make it look real." Graham exhaled once. "Okay. But Camille, once you hand them that paper, you're not just testing him." "I know," I said. "I'm choosing," I corrected. "Either I'm loved or I'm being acquired." When I hung up, my apartment felt different, like it already belonged to someone else. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a cold little timer started counting down to the moment Ethan or his mother realized I wasn't as easy to move as they thought. That evening, Ethan texted me 3 heart emojis, and Mom's excited. She says, "You're finally acting like family." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I opened my closet and I began deciding what I would take with me when the truth finally arrived. By the time Graham emailed me the draft, my hands were steady. That was the part that scared me the most, not the betrayal itself. Betrayal had a way of announcing itself with heat and panic and tears. This was different. This was calm, like my body had stepped out of my heart and into my head, the place where decisions get made without begging anyone to love you back. The document was beautiful. Crisp formatting, professional letterhead, dense legal language that made your eyes slide right over the parts that mattered until it was too late. It looked like something you'd sign quickly just to make the conversation end. Exactly the kind of thing people use to trap you. At the top, lease agreement, residential long-term property, 428 Maple Street. Term 30 years. Annual rent $1. Tenant names Linda Marie Harrison, Robert James Harrison. And then the part that made my throat go dry, even though I was the one who asked for it. Tenant responsibilities included all utilities, all maintenance and repairs, property taxes, Homeowners insurance, no subleasing, no modifications, without written permission. There was even a clause that spelled out what would happen if they defaulted, a clause that said the landlord may pursue legal remedy. The landlord, me. Graham's message was short. Camille, this is a draft. Nobody signs anything. You're safe. But understand the moment you hand this over, you're going to see who they really are. I reread that sentence 3 times. Then I printed 2 copies on heavy paper, the kind that feels expensive, even before the ink dries. I slid them into a folder, like I was preparing a presentation for a meeting I never wanted. And I waited. That evening, Ethan arrived with Thai takeout from my favorite place. That would have meant something a week ago. Now it felt like the last-minute flowers people buy when they've already done the thing they're apologizing for. He was almost glowing. He kissed my cheek, set the food down, and started talking like the fight from the night before had been a tiny misunderstanding already solved. Guess what he said, pulling out his phone? My mom sent me a bunch of paint colors. She's thinking something warm for the living room, like an earthy cream, not your cold gray. I stared at him. He kept going, talking about the wedding menu honeymoon destinations. Baby names like, we were already a married couple, and this house was already a family asset. I forced myself to smile at the right moments, like I was watching someone act out my life on a stage. Then he said it. So he asked casually, like he was asking if I'd remembered to pay the Wi-Fi bill. Did you talk to your lawyer? I stood, walked to the kitchen, and picked up the folder I'd placed on the counter. I came back and handed it to him. Yeah, I said. It's all in there. Ethan's eyes lit up. He opened the folder right away like a kid opening a gift, and he did exactly what Graham predicted. He didn't read. Not really. His eyes skimmed the top, found his parents' names, stopped there. His mouth curled into a satisfied smile, so fast it made my stomach drop. See? He said, laughing, like I'd been dramatic for nothing. That wasn't so hard. He leaned forward and kissed me longer than usual. Too eager, like he was rewarding me. I told my mom. You just needed time, he murmured. I knew you'd come around. I watched him as he flipped the pages, not reading, just flipping, then slid one copy out and tucked it under his arm like it was proof of victory. He didn't even notice the word lease printed in bold across the first page. Or maybe he did. Maybe he just didn't care, because to Ethan, the outcome mattered more than the details. He stood, stretched, and said, I'm going to take this to them tonight. They want to celebrate. Mom's been on my case all day. On my case, like Linda wasn't the one holding the leash. Okay, I said softly. He smiled at me with that warm boyfriend smile I used to melt for. Then he said like it was nothing. My mom said she's proud of you. She said this proves you're serious about joining the family. Joining? Not building one with me. Joining theirs. He left an hour later, and the second the door closed behind him, my apartment went silent in a way that felt final. I stood there looking at the empty hallway, and something inside me whispered. He didn't even ask what the document meant. If it had truly been about security, wouldn't he have wanted to understand it? Wouldn't he have wanted to protect me too? Instead, he'd treated it like a trophy. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I walked to the couch, sat down, and stared at the spot where Ethan had been sitting, where he'd smiled like he'd just won something important. And then I did something that surprised even me. I opened doxxing, my notes app, and started making a list. Not emotional, practical. What I can take tonight, what I can leave behind, who I need to call, what I need to cancel. Because once you see someone's mask slip, you can't pretend you didn't see it. At 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. They're so happy, Mom said she can finally breathe. Another buzz. Dad says, you're a smart woman, he respects you. I stared at those messages and felt a strange numbness spread through me. Not because I believed them, because I didn't, because it wasn't Ethan texting anymore. It was the family using Ethan's phone as a mouthpiece. Then at 10:12 p.m., another message came through. Mom wants to know when she can get a copy of the deed for her records. Deed. There it was, the word they'd all been pretending not to say out loud. My fingers went cold. They weren't celebrating involvement. They were celebrating ownership. They'd been planning for a deed all along, and they thought they had it. I looked around my apartment at the framed engagement photo on the shelf, at the wedding binder on the table, at the tiny sticky note Ethan had once left on my fridge that said, proud of you always. A note that now felt like a lie someone left behind in a crime scene. I picked up my phone and called Graham. He answered on the first ring. "Tell me," he said quietly. "They said deed," I whispered. "They asked for a copy of the deed." There was a pause, then Graham exhaled like he'd expected this. "Okay," he said, "now you know." My throat tightened. "It's not about trust," I said, voice breaking just slightly. "It was never about trust." "No," Graham said. "It's about leverage." Leverage. That word hit me like a door locking. Because leverage is what you use when you don't believe someone will stay willingly. Leverage is what you prepare when love isn't enough. Leverage is what you collect when you plan to take. I swallowed hard. "What do I do now?" Graham's voice was calm, steady. "You don't argue," he said. "You don't defend yourself. You don't negotiate with people who are already counting your assets like they're theirs." My eyes burned, but I forced them dry. "You leave," he said gently. "And you do it clean." "Clean!" I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Then I ended the call and I started packing. I didn't pack like a woman having a breakdown. I packed like a woman evacuating. Clothes, laptop important documents, passport, a few sentimental things I couldn't replace. And then I went to the bedroom closet. Ethan had left a suit jacket there for when we start living together. I pulled it off the hanger and shook it once. Something fell from the pocket, a folded piece of paper. I picked it up, unfolded it, and my breath caught. It was a handwritten list, not in Ethan's handwriting, in Linda's. I recognized it because she used to sign birthday cards with the same looping cursive, the same aggressive little flourish under her name. The list had bullet points, short, cold like a plan. Get names on house before wedding. Secure legal claim. If she resists, frame as trust issue. If she agrees, push for deed, not half. Keep her calm. Praise her. Reward compliance. I stared at the words until they blurred. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a script, a playbook. A mother teaching her son how to extract ownership from the woman he supposedly loved. My hands trembled. Not because I was weak, because I finally understood something I'd been too loyal to admit. Ethan didn't come up with this. He just agreed to be the tool. I sat on the edge of the bed, the list in my lap, and felt the first real wave of grief rise in my chest. 4 years. 4 years of holidays, vacations, late-night talks, promises. And in Linda's handwriting, it all shrank into a checklist. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, furious at myself for almost crying. Then I folded the paper carefully and put it in my bag. Evidence not for court, for closure. To remind myself later when loneliness tried to rewrite the story that I didn't overreact. I escaped. At midnight, Ethan texted again. "I love you. Thank you for doing this. We're going to be okay now." I stared at the message and felt something inside me go very still. He believed it, or he wanted to. And that was almost worse because it meant he could tell himself he loved me while helping someone else take from me. I placed my phone face down. Then I looked at the engagement ring box sitting in my dresser drawer. The ring I'd been so proud to buy. The ring that had felt like a promise. I took it out, held it in my palm. It glittered under the bedroom light like it didn't know what it represented. And I whispered to no one, "I'm not marrying into this." Then I closed the box, put it in my bag, and kept packing. Because Ethan thought the document in his hand was the end of the fight. He thought he'd won. But what he didn't know, what Linda didn't know, what Robert didn't know, was that while they were celebrating, I was already walking away. Not with drama, not with tears, with silence. The kind of silence that becomes a door you can't reopen. And the next morning, I was going to leave them a note. Just one line. A line that would turn their celebration into panic. A line that would make Linda's hands shake when she read it. Because if they wanted paperwork so badly, I was about to show them what paperwork really meant. I left before sunrise. Not because I was afraid Ethan would stop me, but because I didn't want the version of him that wakes up confused and pleading. I didn't want apologies shaped like panic. I didn't want explanations rewritten in real time. I wanted the truth to land without my face attached to it. I packed my car in the dark, moving quietly through my apartment like a guest in my own life. Clothes, laptop, passport documents, the ring, the handwritten list from Linda folded and hidden deep in my bag where denial couldn't reach it. I left the furniture, the kitchen things Ethan had insisted on buying because they were investments. The stand mixer, the knife set, the stupid expensive blender he'd said would be great for when we have kids. I left the engagement photo on the shelf, not out of sentiment, out of finality. At 8:58 a.m., I sent the text, "We're done. Don't contact me." Then I blocked Ethan's number. I didn't block his parents. That part was intentional. I wanted to see how long it would take. The answer was 49 minutes. At 9:47 a.m., my phone lit up with Linda Harrison's name. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. Her voice was shrill, higher than I'd ever heard it, tight with rage, barely held together by the idea that yelling might still fix this. "Camille, what the hell is this?" she snapped. "You can't just put our names on some fake document and abandon my son. This is illegal. This is fraud. This is entrapment or something. You will call me back right now or I'm calling my lawyer. You're going to regret this." I stared at the phone and felt nothing. No fear. No guilt, just confirmation. I saved the voicemail, backed it up. Then at 10:15 a.m., Robert Harrison called. His voice was calmer, measured. The way men sound when they think they can still reason their way back into control. "Camille," he said, "I don't understand what's happening. Ethan's a mess. Linda's talking about lawyers. Can we talk woman to woman?" I almost laughed. Almost. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said evenly. "Yes," he said quickly. "Exactly. This document, Linda says you tricked us, that we're suddenly responsible for some house that you're trying to saddle us with taxes and liability." "You're not responsible for anything," I replied. "It's just a lease." There was a pause. "A lease," he repeated. "Yes," I said. 30 years, $1 a year. You don't even have to move in. It's symbolic, just like Ethan said he wanted." Silence. The kind that stretches. "That's not what we discussed." Robert said carefully. "I didn't discuss anything with you," I replied. "Your son demanded your names on my property. I put your names on a property document. But why not the deed?" he asked. "Why not do it properly?" "Because there it was." The word they'd all tried not to say out loud. "Because your son asked me to give you ownership of my future before we were married," I said calmly. "And I won't do that." Another pause. Longer this time. "You humiliated my family," Robert said finally. "No," I said. I clarified the terms. He exhaled sharply. "Camille, this isn't how adults handle conflict." I smiled despite myself. "This is exactly how adults handle contracts," I said. "You wanted involvement. You got it. You wanted paperwork. You got it. What you didn't get was ownership." "Ethan never meant Robert," I interrupted gently. "Ethan meant exactly what he said, and I meant exactly what I did." I hung up. By noon, Ethan had found a way around the block. A new number, then another. Paragraphs poured in, some angry, some desperate, some trying to rewrite reality in real time. "You blindsided me. My parents are devastated. You embarrassed me. You never said you were leaving. I didn't actually want them on the deed. I just wanted security. You violated my trust. Everyone is asking questions. The vendors are calling. My mom is crying." I read them once, then I replied with a single sentence. "You got what you asked for and blocked that number too." That's when the friends started. Ethan's friends. The ones who toasted us at the engagement party. The ones who'd said we were couple goals. They flooded my social media with accusations. Cruel, manipulative, calculated, financially abusive. One woman, his childhood friend, called me a sociopath. Another said I'd weaponized paperwork. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself because something Graham had said echoed in my head. People who benefit from confusion will always be angry when clarity arrives. 3 days later, I posted one sentence. Not a rant, not a story, just a warning. PSA. If someone asks you to put their parents on your property deed before marriage, ask why. I didn't name Ethan. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't have to. Within hours, the comments filled in the blanks for me. Some people supported me. Some said I was petty. But a few comments shifted everything. One woman, someone who'd gone to college with Ethan, wrote, "I love him, but his mom's been planning this kind of thing for years." Another commented, "Linda has always treated relationships like investments." And then my phone buzzed with a private message from Tessa, Von Ethan's ex-girlfriend. We'd met once briefly, polite smiles, nothing dramatic. Her message was short. "I'm sorry. He didn't come up with this. His mom coached him. She tried it with me, too." I left before it got this far. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. She sent another message. She told him to frame it as trust. That was always her word. Trust. I thought of Ethan's voice the night before. If you really love me, not his words, Linda's. Suddenly, everything rearranged itself. The questions about my salary, the comments about security, the sudden urgency before the wedding. This wasn't a fight between two partners. It was an extraction attempt, and I had walked out just before the machinery closed. That night alone in my temporary studio apartment, I sat on the edge of the bed and let the grief finally arrive. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavy. Because loving someone who lets themselves be used against you hurts in a very specific way. It's not just heartbreak, it's betrayal with a witness. And tomorrow, I knew the fallout was going to get louder. Because people who lose control don't go quietly. They call lawyers. They call friends. They rewrite stories. And Linda Harrison was not done yet. Linda Harrison hired a lawyer. I found out because Graham called me at 7:12 a.m. His voice pitched halfway between amusement and concern. "Camille?" He said, "You're not going to believe this." I stared at the ceiling of my studio apartment, the unfamiliar hum of a building that didn't know me yet. "Try me." "They're threatening to sue you," he said. "Fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, breach of promise." I laughed. Not politely, not quietly. I laughed so hard I had to sit up. "On what grounds?" I asked. "They're claiming you misrepresented the lease as a deed." Graham said that Linda and Robert believed they were gaining ownership. They're also claiming Ethan has suffered severe emotional harm because of how you ended the relationship. I closed my eyes. Of course they were, because when people realize they can't control the outcome, they try to control the narrative. "Graham," I said calmly, "no one signed anything." "I know," he said. And that's exactly what I told their lawyer. No signatures, no notarization, no filing, and no property purchase ever happened. There was a pause. The fraud claim collapsed immediately. He continued, "They didn't have a leg to stand on." I exhaled slowly, but he added, "They're pivoting." "Of course they are." Linda's lawyer also sent a cease and desist, Graham said. "They want you to remove your Facebook post. They're claiming defamation." I laughed again, this time colder. "I didn't name anyone." "Exactly," Graham said. "And truth is an absolute defense. You warned people about a behavior. You didn't accuse anyone. You didn't lie. So what happens now? They're bluffing," he said. "And they're losing." When I hung up, I sat there for a long moment, phone resting on my knee. I felt oddly steady. Not because this was easy, but because every move they made confirmed the same thing. They didn't care about reconciliation. They cared about damage control. That afternoon, the messages started again. Not from Ethan directly, he'd been warned, I suspected, but from people around him. One of his groomsmen sent me a long text about how marriage requires compromise. A bridesmaid accused me of humiliating Ethan publicly. Another friend said I could have handled it privately. I didn't respond because what they meant was, "You should have lost quietly." Then something unexpected happened. The story cracked open from the inside. A mutual friend, someone I barely knew, messaged me screenshots, old messages. Linda talking about locking things down before vows. Linda saying, "Women like Camille need structure." Linda joking publicly about making sure my son doesn't get screwed. Then another message arrived from Ethan's cousin, a woman named Rachel, who'd always been kind to me at family gatherings. She wrote, "I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but this didn't feel right. Linda has been planning this for months. She talked about it at your engagement party. She said you were a good investment and Ethan needed to secure his future." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. I read the message 3 times. Investment. The same word Linda had written on that handwritten list. The same word I hadn't wanted to believe applied to me. Suddenly, all those dinners made sense. The way Linda asked about my retirement accounts. The way Robert casually brought up life insurance. The way Ethan always changed the subject when I talked about shared finances, but never objected when his parents asked about mine. They weren't planning a marriage. They were planning risk mitigation. That night, Ethan finally tried one last time. He showed up at my studio. No warning, just a knock. I stood on the other side of the door, heart pounding not from fear, but from exhaustion. "Camille," he said softly. "Please." I didn't open it. "I didn't mean it like that," he said. "My mom just wanted to feel safe." I laughed quietly, leaning my forehead against the door. "Safe from what?" "Ethan," I asked. "Me leaving silence." "I loved you," he said. "I know," I replied, "but you loved what I could provide more." His voice cracked. "That's not fair." "No, I said it's accurate." He stood there for a long time. Then he left. And for the first time since this started, I felt something loosen in my chest. Because when the truth finally surfaces from friends, from family, from strangers who stop protecting the lie, you realize something powerful. You didn't destroy anything. You interrupted it, and tomorrow the consequences were going to land on them, not on me. The first thing to fall apart was the wedding. Not dramatically, not with a single announcement. It unraveled the way lies do quietly through logistics. The florist called to confirm. The venue emailed about a timeline meeting. The caterer asked about final headcount. Ethan tried to hold it together. I heard that from a mutual friend who still spoke to both of us. How he insisted everything was just on pause. How he told people we were working through something private, but privacy is impossible once money is involved. And deposits don't care about denial. Linda and Robert had paid the venue deposit themselves, $8,000 non-refundable. A gesture they'd made loudly at the time, as proof of how supportive they were. Now it became the first real consequence. When the venue confirmed the cancellation policy, Linda reportedly screamed at the coordinator. Robert tried to negotiate. Ethan tried to mediate. None of it mattered. $8,000 vanished. And suddenly, the blame had somewhere new to land. Not me. Ethan. I didn't know that part at first. I was too busy dealing with the aftershocks of reputation warfare. Someone screenshotted my post. Someone else added context. Someone who knew someone filled in names. By the end of the week, it had reached Ethan's workplace. That part wasn't intentional, but it was inevitable. Ethan worked in an industry where trust and image mattered, where people talked, where clients Googled you before signing contracts. A coworker asked him casually if he was the guy from that post. Another asked if it was true his parents tried to get on a fiancé's deed. And the worst part, Ethan didn't deny it because he couldn't. He tried to explain. He tried to soften it. But once a story becomes about control, explanations sound like excuses. That's when he showed up at my door again. Not tearful, this time. Angry. You ruined my life, he said through the door. People think I'm some kind of gold digger. I closed my eyes. You asked me to put your parents on my house, I said evenly. People think exactly what you showed them. You didn't have to make it public. I didn't, I replied. Other people recognize the pattern. Silence. Then his voice dropped. My parents are furious at me. That was new. They lost money? He continued. They're embarrassed. They think I didn't push hard enough. My mom said if I'd been firmer, you wouldn't have left. I felt a strange flicker of pity. Not enough to open the door. She taught you how to pressure someone. I said she didn't teach you how to love them. He didn't respond. And for the first time, I understood something important. Ethan wasn't just angry because he lost me. He was angry because he lost approval. Linda's approval. The approval he'd been trained to chase. 2 days later, Graham called again. They've dropped everything he said. All of it, he confirmed. No lawsuit, no cease and desist. They realized pushing further would expose more than it would fix. I leaned back against the wall, phone pressed to my ear. What about Ethan? I asked. Graham paused. He's not doing great. I thanked him and hung up. That night, I sat alone with a glass of wine I hadn't touched in days and thought about the man I almost married. The man who could have said no. The man who could have protected me. The man who chose compliance over courage. And I let myself grieve him, not the real one, but the version I thought existed. Because grief is easier when you name what you're actually losing. A fantasy. The next morning, I took the engagement ring to be appraised. The jeweler told me I'd get about 70% of what I paid. I nodded. That money went straight back into my house fund where it belonged. Ethan texted one last time that week. Not an apology, a statement. I hope you're happy. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I deleted the message because happiness isn't the right word. Relief is, clarity is, safety is. And for the first time since the night Ethan said, if you really love me, I slept without my chest feeling tight. Because the collapse they couldn't control, it didn't destroy me. It freed me. And I was finally ready to move forward without leverage, without tests, without anyone confusing love for ownership. 3 weeks after I left, the noise finally died down. Not because people stopped talking, but because the story stopped changing. That's how you know the truth has settled. Ethan posted a vague Instagram story about choosing himself and walking away from toxicity. No names, no details, just carefully curated sadness with a black and white filter. The comments were split, half supportive, half quietly skeptical. People had started asking questions, and once questions exist, control disappears. I heard through a mutual friend that Ethan had moved back in with his parents temporarily, that he was taking time off work, that Linda was furious, not at me, but at him, Because in her mind, he had failed. Not as a partner, as a strategy. Robert sent me one final text, just one line. "You're a difficult woman, but you weren't wrong. I'm sorry, I read it once, then I archived it because apologies that arrive after leverage is gone aren't for healing, they're for easing guilt." I didn't reply. What would I even say? That I forgave him for not stopping something he never objected to. That I understood why he watched instead of intervened. Some things don't need closure. They need distance. I sold the ring 2 days later. The jeweler confirmed the estimate, about 70% of what I'd paid. I transferred the money into my savings account, labeled the Folder House Fund, and closed my laptop. No ceremony, no tears, just intention. A week after that, I toured a small 3-bedroom place on the edge of the city. Quiet street, mature trees, enough light to keep plants alive. I stood alone in the empty living room, while the realtor talked about square footage and resale value. And for the first time, I didn't imagine someone else standing beside me. I imagined peace. That night, lying in bed, I made a list not of red flags, of non-negotiables, and no parental involvement in finances. No tests disguised as trust. No pressure framed as love. No future built on fear of abandonment. I realized something then, something simple but powerful. Love that needs leverage isn't love. It's control with better branding. As for Ethan, last I heard he was back on dating apps. His bio said he was looking for someone mature, grounded, and financially stable. His photos were from trips we took together, restaurants I introduced him to, moments I paid for. He cropped me out. That didn't hurt. It confirmed everything, because people don't erase you from photos unless you remind them of who they were before they chose wrong. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd signed the deed. If I'd smiled and agreed and told myself it was normal. I picture the slow unraveling, the power imbalance, the quiet resentment, the exit that would have cost me everything instead of saving it. And then I think about the lease, the document everyone called petty, the piece of paper that did exactly what it was meant to do. It revealed intention. If you demand someone give your parents legal claim to their future, you're not asking for commitment. You're asking for leverage. And I don't negotiate with people who see love as an asset to acquire. I negotiate with banks. I negotiate with contractors. I do not negotiate my safety. So no, I don't regret how I handled it. Not even a little. Because I didn't lose a fiancé. I avoided a lifetime contract where the fine print was written by someone else. And this time the house will be mine.